Let's go now to Vehbi Baysan, who is an associate professor of history at Haldun University. He joins me from here in Istanbul. Professor, good to have you on with us. Do you have hopes for the ceasefire? One, that Ukraine will accept it, and that it also, if they do, that it could potentially pave the way for something longer lasting?
Well, we very much hope so, because this is such a brutal and almost a year now on, and thousands of people lost their lives and millions displaced. So it is, I mean, it has to stop. But what happens, especially with this ceasefire for Orthodox Christmas? But let's remember and underline this. This is all personal efforts of Mr. Erdogan, because sometime in these kind of really difficult crisis, it seems international organizations are not much effective, namely the United Nations and European Union, and obviously Turkey as a NATO member, not acting necessarily representing NATO, but with the personal efforts of the president of Turkey, I mean, he actualizes, he quietly made it by speaking with Mr. Putin, first of all, gaining his confidence. But we know that they have this very strong personal friendship and relation between the two, and also Mr. Zelensky as well. He confirmed that receiving and seeing Mr. Erdogan as a partner that can be trusted, and actually his mediation can be trusted. But again, as Turkey always do, Mr. Erdogan quietly mentioned he had a conversation with Mr. Putin in a noon press conference, and thereafter with Mr. Zelensky said he would speak, and bingo, we have the announcement, and it is done. So I'm very happy to see this, especially seeing that Turkey's mediation is fruitful and delivering results.
Professor, I'm just seeing here that Ukraine has responded to this call for a ceasefire, calling it hypocrisy, and saying that Russian troops must leave all the Ukrainian territory before they're willing to accept a ceasefire. Do you think that this is propaganda on Putin's part, calling for a ceasefire, potentially knowing that Ukraine would not accept it?
Well, it's very difficult to know, but it's certainly a positive gesture. If we put the rhetorics aside, this is a positive thing. We should take it this way. At least we have something in hand, and at least there is someone mediating, and at least two sides are listening. Otherwise, it is extremely difficult to find a viable exit strategy, because the longer the conflict, the first thing is the trust will diminish. And then, of course, the rhetorics will start, and both sides, because after all, what happened, it will be very difficult to sit around the table. So I think this is a chance. This should be seen as a great opportunity, and both sides to sit down and negotiate, probably sometime putting aside the preconditions. I know how difficult it is. I know it is, but it has to be done. Otherwise, we will have another winter or another summer coming, and we will not see any end to this conflict. Of course, as your pictures also see, that the show that ordinary people suffering enormously, and the cities are destroyed, not only villages and towns. So this has to end, and this should be taken as an opportunity.
Certainly, and despite the war continuing, we have seen moments of diplomacy, the grain deal, for example, and prisoner swaps. What other opportunities might arise for diplomacy from this?
But first of all, that I think ceasefire should be prolonged, and it shouldn't be violated in any way, because it's very important to build confidence. And now we have this prisoners swap. Of course, it's another positive step towards peace, hopefully. But also grain deal. Let's remember that 21 million tons of grain were like literally stuck in the silos, and the parts of the world that desperately need this grain were really suffering, because that was pushing up the food prices, etc. And again, Mr. Erdogan's personal efforts, let's remember that the deal was done. So why not now a peace deal at least can start? At least the two sides can sit around the table and start negotiating, start try to find solutions for this awful conflict. That I mean, we know historically. I'm an historian that the wars have no winners. So what will be left behind is a total destruction. It's not going to help either Ukraine or Ukrainians as well as Russia and Russians. So I think it has to stop. And it's I think a very I'm very optimistic that this can be taken, further and hopefully will be extended. But let's fingers crossed. I mean, as I said, the efforts are there and sides are listening. At least, otherwise they don't listen to international organizations to help the situation. So Turkey becomes very, very important in a pivotal role in the region to bring a prolonged or maybe definitive solution and peace to the conflict.
You're absolutely right. Negotiation has to start somewhere, and this at least is some hope for potential for peace. Associate Professor of History Vehbi Baysan, thank you so much.